In the early 2010s, basic was an insult. And I know this because I participated in the hateration and holleration in the dancery. If you like pumpkin spice lattes, wore black leggings and plaid shirts, and got excited when Starbucks brought out the seasonal menu, congratulations, you were basic. And for a while, being basic was apparently the worst thing a person could be. Because if everybody liked something, how could it possibly be interesting? We had to be different. We had to have obscure interests. We had to prove that we weren't like everybody else. And then I grew up. And you know what I discovered? I love being basic because sometimes I don't want to prove that I'm more interesting than everyone else. Sometimes you just want the pumpkin spice latte. Sometimes you want comfortable leggings. Sometimes I want the thing that works. And that, my dear gals, gays, and theys, that is why I love Rabute Guilliman, the Primarch hated for being basic. While it would be incredibly tempting and easy for me to say that, 90% of the fandom hates Guilliman because they hate themselves, I'm gonna be mature about it and discuss why I think the Guilliman hate train needs to be dialed back just a little bit. Hey everyone, welcome back to Warhammer for Tourists. I'm your host Momchalant, LARPing through 40k right along with everyone else. So, one of the many things I noticed immediately when I got into 40k earlier this year was that people had an awful lot of awful to say about the Primarch of the 13th. While it can be said that I haven't read all the books on Guilliman back to back to back, I have been trying to see, compare, and contrast his behaviors, feats, and overall personality against his brothers who don't get dogged on half as much as he does. Traitor Primarchs included. It's wild. What are the war crimes this man has committed that I'm not privy to that rival Horus and the Lion to warrant epic vitriol? Okay, now let's take a step back, and I wondered if it's the fact that Games Workshop is very clearly playing favorites. Gentlemen, you're not doing well with hiding your bias over who's your favorite son. So here's my hot take based on what I've read across books, online lore, and fan commentary. I think some of the hostility towards Guilliman comes from a very specific kind of fandom mentality. The assumption that anything mainstream, uncomplicated, or conventionally competent must automatically be inferior. 40k is an especially fertile environment for that attitude because look at what the setting rewards aesthetically. Grotesque mutations, horrifying trauma, incomprehensible religious fanaticism, tragic backstories, and characters who have committed 47 war crimes before having breakfast. Basic doesn't scale. So what does basic actually mean? It can mean competent, practical, predictable, conventional, mainstream. And Guilliman is good at administration. He values structure. He is literally the poster child for the Imperium. And y'all are gonna get hella riled up for this, but if you think about it for a moment, none of those things are inherently bad. His brothers are often written around some huge defining thing. Angron is, being a victim of rage. Fulgrim has Versailles levels of elegance and perfection. Perturabo makes, generational resentment his entire personality. Lorgar has blind faith, and Sanguinius is the epitome of nobility and looking like a supermodel with angel wings. And Russ is a Viking furry. Now Guilliman, he runs an empire. His defining characteristic is basically, this needs to function. And that's immediately way less appealing or sexy It's less compelling because he's doing the grown-up stuff that nobody really wants to deal with. Let's be honest. Organization, diplomacy, and, well, trying to make sure everyone gets supplies before they face extinction. Fandoms usually want obscurity as social currency. The more niche your knowledge is, the more distinction you can create between people who quote-unquote really understand the thing and filthy casuals and LARPing tourists like myself. And Guilliman represents the casual entry point to 40k more than some of his brothers do. He's recognizable in that blueberry armor. He's one of the first names you're likely to encounter. He's one of the most prominently marketed Primarchs. He's basically the Starbucks pumpkin spice latte of Primarchs, and I say that with love. I will never assume or ask, why is Guilliman secretly awesome? I'm asking you, why do so many of us associate popular and uncomplicated with inferior? Maybe I like Guilliman because I've stopped needing everything I love to prove something about me. I love that Guilliman is what it says on the tin. He will defend Ultramar, he will fight for the Imperium, and make 7 different spreadsheets in between meetings. Like, I'm sorry you prefer your Primarchs with head trauma nails, or with a crippling need to hold the longest grudge in the history of ever. If that's your journey, then babe, I support you, but don't dunk on my Primarch because he likes to inventory the pantry. Your Primarch likes to quilt human skin on his days off. Mine writes a shopping list. Can we please coexist? We can all have our weird little guys. My weird little guy having a functional frontal lobe is not a character flaw. Being boring doesn't mean being badly written. It means he isn't constantly trying to prove that he's exceptional. He doesn't need to be the edgiest, most tragic, most psychologically tortured, most aesthetically dramatic Primarch in the room. He's just like, there are 300 million people living here and approximately 14,000 things need to happen before Tuesday, before the orc invasion, which was slated for tomorrow. Lock in and let's figure this out. Meanwhile, his brothers are having a full Shakespearean tragedy in the parking lot. Now, that's not to say Guilliman doesn't also participate in the theatrics. He drops some sick burns too. But he doesn't commit to the theater kid bit. Because he knows he has deadlines to meet. Ultimately, to make sure everybody else can still perform on stage. And yes, I understand people are sick of Ultramarines being everywhere. I'm not going to sit here again and pretend Games Workshop, much like the Emperor, doesn't have a favorite child. But corporate overexposure is not the same thing as Guilliman being a bad character. I don't need my choice of Primarch to function as a personality credential. I will not argue with the wall. Now, here are the potential arguments that I will absolutely exterminatus the ass out of. Number 1, Gilly is a nepo baby. Okay, so he was raised on Macragge in an incredibly stable environment. Congratulations, you discovered the backstory of Rebute Guilliman and you win nothing for that. He also spent approximately 10,000 years of his life dead for all intents and purposes. Upon waking up, he beheld the absolute dumpster fire his civilization had become and went, oh man, time to get to work. And then he started trying to fix it. So what exactly is your gotcha moment here? Yes, he came from privilege, and he's trying to use what he was given to protect people and the Imperium. It's giving Wayne Enterprise and Stark Technology. Privilege isn't automatically a moral indictment. What matters is what someone does with it. Next question, guys. Okay, so his powers and feats aren't as awesome as XYZ Primarch. Okay, cool. But your Primarch also got his dump truck ass handed to him more than once. And that's okay. Move on. Losing a battle or argument doesn't make your Primarch less cool. So why does Guilliman losing a fight somehow make him less cool? We're talking about fictional demigods here. They're allowed to lose fights. That's what makes fights interesting. Because this whole my Primarch could be your Primarch is basically kindergarten playground discourse about who has the prettier mermaid Barbie. Like, guys, not every Grimdark character needs to be seething with pus and rage and drama. Like, why are you mad that someone comes into the setting with a baseline degree of normalcy and yet can still wield the Emperor's sword? Not every character needs to walk into a room carrying 30 pounds of childhood trauma and a weapon that they named after their mother. Just consider that for a second. He feels comparatively normal in a universe filled with horror. He's not constantly screaming, I am the incarnation of my own psychological wound. He's just like, there are supply shortages. I need to figure these out. And somehow that is refreshing in a world where everyone else has decided the appropriate response to being offended is genocide. Grimdark doesn't mean every character has to be miserable in the same exact way. Grimdark works partly because there are different responses to an awful environment. You have characters who embrace brutality, faith, nihilism, vengeance, perfection, knowledge, and obsessive control. And then Guilliman is basically, I don't need to make everything unnecessarily difficult just to prove I'm interesting. He does not have to be the most flashy or dramatic person in the room. He can just be the guy who looks at the apocalypse and says, okay, so what can we actually do about this? Guilliman, in a universe full of people trying desperately to prove how extraordinary and cool they are, is just willing to do the daggone job. And honestly, to me, that's pretty cool. Again, your Primarch quilts human skin. Mine collects recipe cards. We are different, and that's okay. With all the clowns in the circus, someone at least had to be normal, and you're mad at me about that. If your immediate reaction to that is, well, that's boring. Brother, consider what that says about you. Maybe I'm missing something. I've only been in this fandom since March. If there's a Guilliman crime I haven't discovered yet, please tell me, and it better not be concerning Monarchia or the fact that he has a Fanon Eldari baddie for a girlfriend, and your Primarch doesn't have a girlfriend. That doesn't count. So here's my question for you. If Games Workshop didn't push the Ultramarine agenda quite so hard, would you still hate Guilliman? Or are you still gonna be a butthurt word bearer? Let me know down in the comments. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I'm your host, Momchalant, and I'll speak with y'all again soon. Bye!